Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
This is Mission Evolution, where we explore the expanding frontiers of human consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Throughout history, the veil between worlds has been whispered about, feared, revered, and sought after. Today, advances in both science and spirituality are bringing us closer than ever to understanding the mysteries that lie just beyond the physical plane. What are spirits? Why do they linger? And what can their presence teach us about our own evolutionary journey? Our guest this hour is Nicole Strickland, paranormal researcher, afterlife investigator, author, and one of the leading voices in modern spiritual communication. With decades spent exploring haunted environments and studying the subtle interplay between consciousness and the unseen, Nicole brings a grounded yet deeply insightful perspective to the mysteries of life, death, and everything in between. Join us as we venture into the realms beyond the veil to discover what spirit encounters may reveal about our own path towards evolution. Her website is NicoleDStrickland.com. Nicole, thank you for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's such an honor.
Oh, it's an honor to have you, and this is such a wonderful topic, and you're quite the authority on it. So,
my God.
We should have a good time.
Kind of you. Yeah, that's so kind of you. It's definitely, it's a very immersive, interesting topic for sure.
So what first awakened your interest in the paranormal and spirit communication?
Yeah, this is a question. I have to try to condense it because there's so much I want to say, but I've always, I know this may sound weird, but I tell people that I think I was born to do this sort of work because I feel like I've always been open to it. As far back as I can remember, we're talking 4 and 5 years old. That's actually when I had my first, what I believe was an unexplainable encounter. And just the interest in spirit communication, ghosts, haunted locations, the paranormal in general has always been with me. And so I would read anything I could on the topic, watch anything I could. And so that interest stayed with me as I grew up. And then I had a very profound experience with the spirit of my maternal grandmother, Helen Lopinto, which I've shared many times. And I'll just briefly talk about it. I was attending the University of Arizona. So this was in the year 2000. And so my grandmother called me the day before she passed, and we had about a 20-minute conversation. I get a call the next day from my mom, her daughter, of course, and I knew something was wrong. And so that's when she said, I love you so much, but grandma passed away this morning. And so I got the next flight out to San Diego, where my family's from, spent a few days, and then went back out to Tucson, Arizona, where the U of A is. And I started having experiences in my apartment that I did not have prior to her passing. And so I chalked it up as, well, I'm in an apartment, I'm upstairs, it's vibration, it's my neighbors, what have you. But it just was a succession of things. So hearing the front doorknob and the doorknob to my bedroom almost twisting as if, someone was there, but I couldn't see them. And then one night I didn't see anything, but I felt a disembodied hand caress my face. It felt as though it came from someone that I knew and loved. And then all this happened within about a week. And then a week later, I think I was writing a paper, and I was on my bed, and I saw something in my peripheral vision. And when I looked, I saw my grandmother's spirit form. She looked about 10 years younger. It appeared as though there was a spotlight shining against her, giving her that white halo effect. And she didn't say anything, but she looked, like I said, 10, maybe 15 years younger, wearing one of her favorite house dresses. And she just looked at me and smiled. And then I saw her demanifest, if you will, with my own eyes. And so that is what catapulted me into actually investigating and becoming an active paranormal investigator.
Bit of a defining moment for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, it really was. I've had experiences prior to that, but that just was very, very profound. And when I think about it, I'm tossed between, did I somehow project? Was that some sort of like a grieving hallucination on my part because I was very close to her, or did she visit me? I think it's the latter. No one else in the family had an experience. It was only me that I know of. So I don't know. Maybe she knew somehow that I was open to and can, have. We all have intuition. Don't get me wrong, but that I could sense spiritual presences, and so maybe that's why, I don't know.
So you literally saw her like she was standing in the room, but she had a more of an etheric look?
She did, yeah, she was solid, she wasn't translucent, but, when I looked, it appeared as though there was like a white, or a spotlight shining against her back, which gave her like a light halo around her body, if you will, and then, she was solid, just like you're looking at me or me looking at you, but she looked about 10 or 15 years younger. She looked very, very healthy and vibrant, she had a slight smile on her face. So
Did you have other visitations from her, or and do you still, or has she kinda crossed to the other side and hasn't been around?
I think she's definitely crossed. I do think she is spirit. I can sense when she's around, but I have not actually seen her before like I did that first time. So
When you sense her, is it a smell? Is it a what how do you pick it up?
I
What's
c
it like?
it's just her energy. I can sometimes I can smell her perfume because she wore, Estee the old-fashioned, like, Estee Lauder, and sometimes
Mhm.
I can smell that, but it's more or less just, I think, a soul recognition. I just know when she comes around. Oops, I'm sorry, and then she usually comes around, anniversaries, holiday times, things like that, but she was very, very, intuitive and sensitive herself. So I
Do
think
you
that
feel
that
like
plays into it.
you were probably more like her than the others?
It could be in the sense of being more in tune with my intuition and just, being able to sense spiritual energy. I think, I do. I think that's passed down through the maternal line. My mom has it too. She's not able to recognize it as much, but I can tell. But my grandmother, there was definitely something there that she had. I wish that she was still alive today because I would sit down and, pick her brain and stuff. But yeah, for sure, I think I'm kind of that general sense has passed down the line.
How has your personal spiritual evolution shaped your investigative methods?
That's a very, very good question. When I started out, I was so interested in capturing evidence, like, oh, the next EVP, the next disembodied voice, the next anomalous photograph. And don't get me wrong, that's all very important. But as I've evolved, to me, what's more important is the rapport and the relationship that we as living in the mortal realm can develop with the spirit world. And I do believe that there's an intertwining of the two. There's like this parallel relationship between our world and the next, and we need to pay more attention to it. And I think that people are starting to realize that, but it's really helped me to gain more of an appreciation for history. I've always loved history, but the people that walked the land before us, it's gained me more of a understanding and even an appreciation of the dying process and the transition process, that physically, when our loved ones pass on, they're not there physically anymore, but that connection, that soul to soul connection that we have with them, that's very, very strong. And so it's really helped me to grieve and move through the processes of losing a loved one. In fact, I just lost two people in July dear to me. My
I'm so
friend
sorry.
Eric, yeah, my friend Eric, 2 days apart, mind you. My friend
Oof.
Eric, and then the honorary Commodore of the RMS Queen Mary, Everett Horde. So they passed in July, 2 days apart. So investigating wise, of course, I I approach it with, and I don't want to sound preachy, but respect and reverence all the way. So I'm very meticulous in my, approaching paranormal investigations. I don't necessarily approach it with a cookie cutter approach. I base it on what's happening at that location. But for me, like I said, going back to what I initially said, it's the rapport and the relationship that we can develop with these energies, to me, is more important than just capturing, an EMS or an EVP or anything like that. So
That makes sense to me. It's like if you can talk to the dead, doesn't mean just because they're dead, it doesn't mean that they aren't people and they don't have
right,
feelings and they don't have a need to interact and have respect. And it seems like most of us are either ignore that it's there, are terrified that it's there, or are
right.
running around with our little instruments, I have a sign. you know.
Right. See, and that right there is you just brought up a good point. I think that in investigating, and this is what I should have said too to your previous question, I don't rely too much on, I do obviously rely on it, but not overly so, like I did maybe in the beginning, where you have all these instruments out and you're spending all your time staring at the instruments. And then you miss out on what your intuition is picking up, what your normal senses are picking up. And so I've learned to almost investigate more from a intuitive standpoint. And that's really, really helped
That makes a
greatly.
lot of sense because it's coming in through your facility, really, right?
Right, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Uh-huh. So, from your experience, what exactly is a ghost and how many kinds are there?
Oh my goodness. I'm guilty of this too. I think that we all use the words ghost and spirit interchangeably, but I do think there's similarities and differences. This is just my opinion. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Ghost is what we also know as an earthbound entity, and it obviously there may be a residual or psychic imprint component or an intelligent. I don't like classifying them too much, but just for understanding purposes, intelligent varieties that we can actually communicate with in real time. I think a ghost is, again, the once living energy of a person or an animal, but yet they're not, either by choice or not, or there could be many reasons. They haven't, how do I put it, moved through the different ranks of spirithood and ascended to where they have full free will. Whereas I think a spirit, of course, the once living energy of a human or animal, but that individual has evolved more into the higher ranks of spirithood and has more free will. That's kind of how I define the two. But there's so I don't know how many classifications there are. I mean, there could be some classifications that we don't even know about, but in terms of ghosts or spirits, but you commonly hear of, the residual varieties, the intelligent varieties, or crisis apparitions, which are known to be entities that will appear, right before or after someone has passed, doppelgangers. But it's like there's so many classifications, and I'm sure there's a lot more that we don't
Well,
know yet about.
we're going to have to take a station break. Nicole and I will return very shortly, so don't you go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Can ships be haunted? With us discussing investigating the paranormal is Nicole Strickland. Her website, NicoleDStrickland.com. Nicole, let's talk about your experiences investigating the haunted ship, Queen Mary. What first drew you to investigate the RMS Queen Mary, and what makes her such a compelling haunted location?
Oh my goodness, this is such a loaded question. I love it. And it's like with the Queen Mary, I could just go on all day and talk about it. So I have to condense. So my mom actually went on board the Queen Mary long before I did. She did ballroom dancing in an area that was, when the ship was a luxury ocean liner. It was the Veranda Grill that we know today, but then it was known as the Starlight Roof Club. And so it's on the aft part of the ship there. you can access it from Sun Deck. And so she did ballroom dancing. So I've known about the Queen Mary, but my first sighting of her occurred during my college years. So it was our junior year, and it was spring break, and a friend and I decided to come back out to Southern California to go on a 3-day Carnival cruise. And so there's a Carnival cruise port right adjacent to the Queen Mary there. And so I remember seeing it from the back seat of a car. And it's very hard to put this in words, but when I looked at it, I made a mental note and I said, I will be back someday. And that day came in 2005. And I try to describe this as descriptively as I can in my books or presentations that I do about the ship, but it was almost an instant soul to soul connection with the ship when I first stepped on board, literally off the gangway and on A deck, where that's one of her hotel decks. I felt like I've been there before. Everything felt just beautiful and just so serene there. And it was an instant love connection with the Queen Mary. And so that started everything. And at that point, I started to research the ship's very, very extensive layered history and even her paranormal activity. And so I'm both into the history of the ship, pretty much everything about the ship, but also the paranormal aspect as well. And I've done several paranormal research or investigation projects on board in various areas of the liner over the years. And paranormal wise, a lot of the same things that you can experience at other locations. It's very visual. So people will see full-bodied, partially manifested apparitions of even former crew members, passengers, even World War II servicemen, you name it. And then there's also, it's very audio friendly. So you can hear a lot of disembodied vocalizations, things of that nature. People have been touched on board. In my experience of researching the ship, and it's my second home. I've been there hundreds of times. I don't think any energy on there is negative or anything like that. It's a very loving, positive, embracing feel, at least in my experiences. And so, but what makes the Queen Mary interesting to me is that her consistency of paranormal activity. Of course, it may wax and wane, but it's consistent across the board. And I've talked to people that have had almost unique, like identical experiences weeks, months, and even years apart. So there's a consistency among her resident energies and just regarding her paranormal activity. But I think too, at the core of the ship's ghostly phenomena is the ability that she has of being magnetic, not necessarily magnetic in the physical sense, but magnetic in that she can receive and transmit, almost like how crystals can. And so it makes her like a time capsule, if you will. So we're past, present, and future kind of fuse. So
interesting. I have a friend that's a piano tuner, and she told me something so fascinating yesterday.
oh
She said
wow.
that if you consistently tune a piano, the organic material in the piano will resonate with that and then hold the tuning. And I'm wondering
I
how
believe it.
this applies to the Queen Mary, her sitting on water, and her just like you say, holding that frequency.
I think I do discuss, I don't think there's one theory. I think there's a multi-layered reason as to why the paranormal or why the ship has so much paranormal activity on this consistent basis. Of course, as we know, her history is almost unprecedented for any ocean liner. But like we were talking about earlier, water being a component, some of the materials that went into the ship, like the iron, the manganese bronze propellers, the quartzite, and the former first and third class pool. My friend Tony Ashland, too, he is an amateur radio operator. And he shared with me that he believes the Queen Mary is like a giant crystal radio because it has all the components for that within the ship. And so he shared with me one day, he's like, I do feel like you do, Nicole. I think she's one giant transmitter and receiver. But just other energies, or other reasons too. people going in every day wanting to experience something paranormal, then you bring in that psychokinetic sort of influence as well. But I think at the core of it is just her history and this magnetic sense about the ship. But I think there might be elusive reasons too that we don't know, that only she knows. I do feel, and this may not resonate with certain people, and that's fine, but I'm basing this just on my experience and knowledge of the ship. I do feel that there's a pretty strong sentient component to the ship itself.
As you speak about her, I just keep goosebumping, and it is like you're talking about a person, and she feels like a person. How much do you feel her wartime service and tragic events contributed to the paranormal activity reported on board?
Yeah, I think all of that contributes, and that's what I should have mentioned this earlier. She's seen practically every emotion. She's witnessed every emotion on board, from elation and pure luxury to, uh, like for example, the prisoners of war, the German and Italian prisoners of war that were kept on board, and there were areas below the water line where they were kept, and bread and water were lowered in buckets. And as the ship sailed through various hot climates, and she didn't have air conditioning because she was designed for the North Atlantic route for her luxury ocean liner days. But when the ship during the war sailed to these very, Australia, Middle East, and so on, no air conditioning. So a lot of these guys succumbed, and there were many deaths. Probably not all of them were reported either. But I do think that, in regards to the paranormal activity on board, yes, there may be some leftover emotion from some that have passed away on board, but that, or maybe still have that memory, but that doesn't make them malevolent or anything like that. It's just the experiences um, haven't been so good for them. And then on the other hand, you have people lavish luxury sailing across this magnificent ocean liner. So I think there's all of the historical tapestry that circles the Queen Mary, or is part of it. All of that contributes. It's like
Mm.
giant pieces of the puzzle trying to put them together.
And she seems very multidimensional, well, as was her life, no doubt.
Right.
What
Yeah.
are what
Point.
what areas of the ship have you found to be the most paranormally active? And can you describe some of the standout experiences you've had there?
Oh, yeah, sure. I've had so many experiences. I'll pick a few, but I think anywhere on the ship is fair game. You can have an experience anywhere. I believe that the highly traveled to spots, like on the tours, for example, they naturally get more reports. So these would include the former first and third class pool. And you might say, third class, what happened? So in the late 50s, when air travel became prominent for the affluent, they actually opened up the first class pool to third class passengers because the second class already had its pool as well. So just wanted to make mention of that. But former first and third class pool is a giant hub. Shadow people have been spotted. There's a little I shouldn't say she's little, but she is little. Her name is Jackie. She's probably the most well known aboard the Queen Mary. She's around 6 or 7 years old. We do not know her origins. The late Peter James, who is sadly no longer with us, actually coined her in the early 90s and felt that she drowned in the second class pool. But to my knowledge and other researchers I know that have delved into this, we cannot find any origins to Jackie. But for whatever reason, she's very intelligent, very engaging, around 6 or 7 years old. She almost looks like she could be a sister to Shirley Temple. But
Whoa.
I've questioned, could she have passed away as an adult and come back and, as a child? I don't know. There's so many questions, but she's very engaging, seems to be drawn to certain individuals. I've seen her. I've communicated with her. I'm very familiar with her voice. Let's see, the boiler rooms and the aft engine room are very popular. The isolation ward too. A lot of the places that they take you on for the tours, just like I said, naturally get more reports. But there are several resident energies, and there are a few that are documented deaths. So William Eric Stark, for example, was a senior second officer, and he actually was fighting a cold. This was, I believe I should know this off the top of my head. I think it was 49 when he passed away. And he actually thought he drank gin, but it was actually carbon tetrachloride. So he passed away a few days later. He's been seen and spotted and heard. There's an 18-year-old crewman. I'm not going to say his name just because the family doesn't want us to say his name, but he hailed from Skipton, North Yorkshire, joined the Queen Mary in 1966, was a fireman and bilge cleaner working the boiler rooms. And sadly, on July 10th, in the early hours of the morning, 1966, he was found wedged in watertight door number 13 on the starboard shaft alley side. He has been spotted. I've seen him myself. There's a picture of him. So I've seen him. It's almost as if his picture has come to life. I've heard him. So, but there's Peter James once said that he felt that there were over 600 ghosts and spirits on board. But it's hard to put a number because I think the Queen Mary, there's energies that travel through her, may not stay, but then there are those that are connected with her history and have, for whatever reason, some have chosen to stay, maybe some have not. So, but I've had so many different, it's hard to pick one, but I've seen full-bodied apparitions. I've disembodied voices. I've even heard my name being called several times, like male, female voices. Hi, Nicole. Nicole's here, things of that nature. Usually within the first 5 or 10 minutes of me arriving. It's weird. But just some of my most profound encounters have occurred on the Queen Mary.
Do you think that they, because you've gone so often, start to build a relationship and recognize you?
I think that that's possible. I mean, I'm trying to be as humble as I can about this, but I do think I do. Yeah.
Well, it's unusual for someone to do paranormal investigation and also have that compassion connection on a person-to-person level, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's true. And just with the Queen Mary, it's, every location that I've investigated is important, and I've always learned something from every case I've worked on, but there's such a strong personal connection to the ship. So I think that is maybe felt as well, by the other side. So
She seems to just, I don't know, as you speak of her, it's like a safe harbor, if you will.
that's a good way to put it. Yes, that's how I feel. That's
Yeah.
absolutely how I feel on board.
Well, it's time for us to take yet another station break. Nicole and I will be right back. So to continue this discussion, please stay there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. What do ghosts have to do with evolution? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing hauntings is Nicole Strickland. Nicole, how can understanding the afterlife contribute to evolution of human consciousness?
Oh, this is a great question. And I actually tried to somewhat not answer it, but give my own personal input on this in one of my last books, The Afterlife Chronicles. And this goes back to what I was saying before about in my opinion, there's this strong interplay or parallel relationship between the afterlife and our world. And I feel in many ways that the spirit world, of course, is more highly advanced, has knowledge that it can help, bestow to us living in the mortal realm. Are we allowed to know all the secrets of the afterlife? I don't think so. But I think if we pay attention more to what the spirit world is trying to teach us, because I think we're getting on that end, we're getting more into a soul to soul communication. I think if we try to pay attention to it more, we will reap the benefits and just gain more knowledge. I think that it's there's a pureness to it, in my opinion, that I think it's it's hard to put this in words, but that it's trying to teach us to be the best versions of ourselves that we can. So, in that case, I think that can, definitely benefit, but I think also, uh, just having a general understanding of the dying process and knowing that when our loved ones cross and pass, that they're all still a part of us, right? The soul, I do believe that the soul survives death, kind of more along the lines of like noetic science. So I think um, can really help as well. But yeah, that's a great question. Great
Are,
question.
are paranormal experiences catalysts for personal or collective awakening?
I think so. I think that I, if an investigator, I think it depends on well, no, you can have an investigator that really isn't open to heeding the messages, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't attempting to impart it. So, yes, I do. I do in many respects. I'm trying to. There was an example I was just going to say, and I totally forgot what was. I hate that when my brain does that. But I think it can teach us a lot about ourselves. Like for me, as an example, I've always had this love of history, but it's enabled me to have even more of an appreciation of history. And I know this may sound hokey, but it I've been able to become more aware of my own soul, my own desires, my own intuition. So it has helped me with personal growth in that capacity. And I think that it can help others as well. The question is, are others open to it like I've been? And maybe if they're not realizing messages that are trying to be imparted, then maybe I mean, maybe the soul can grasp it, but if their ego is so strong and it's kind of like not preventing that, but dampening it, I guess that can be a problem.
One thing that's becoming glaringly obvious, and I think has for a long time, is the consumer greed. The Native Americans call it the Watiko virus, but basically, the preoccupation with how we look and what we have. And when you die, none of that goes with you.
None of it
Wh-
matters, yep.
What
Mhm.
can humanity learn from these encounters about our true nature?
See, that's just it. That is, that is such an important point, and I think there's a constant investigating the paranormal and being open to the other side and being open to communicating with loved ones or even strangers. If we go on, these investigations, we don't necessarily know who's at those locations, but it's a constant kind of wake up call, I think, for us to be alerted that, you know what, we need to move more toward uh, quality as opposed to quantity. And I was just going to say, oh, this is what I was going to say too. And it leads me to say, and I talk about this a lot, and I don't want to sound arrogant or anything like that, but in the field of the paranormal, the entertainment industry, in my opinion, often exploits it, and you're getting more of the superficial idea about it instead of delving deeper to the heart of the matter. It's not about views. It's not about constantly trying to throw fear and terror in our face or misrepresenting the spirit realm. It's not anything about that. It's, if we can, as a paranormal community and even those outside, realize that it goes deeper than that, I think that is what's going to really propel this field forward. But this constant superficiality around it, exploitation around it, is I don't know if it's going to advance as long as that is occurring. But yeah, I'm going on a tangent. I'm sorry.
No problem. You do a nice soapbox.
Oh, shoot, we can just go on. Oh my gosh.
What ethical guidelines, speaking of which, are essential when you're investigating active spiritual environments?
Oh, absolute paraethics. And my teammate Allie and I talk about this all the time. Well, obviously, you have to not just think about ethics in regards to your teammates or the location or your clients, but the spirits themselves, the energies that you're working with. So, constantly approaching it with the golden rule, so to speak, being respectful, being reverent, not provoking, not demanding, anything like that. But also with your clients, being upfront with your clients. You want to let them know about the processes that you're going to be going through, the methodology. And I hate to say this, but I'm a paper pusher. So, those forms, those investigation permission forms, those liability waivers, things of that nature, have those on hand. But just treating the whole process with respect, but also with dignity, I think it goes a long way. That's the general ethical framework. But then, being honest, a lot of what applies to any other job in real life, but on an investigation, making sure that teammates are, abiding by the standard operating procedures or certain protocols, things of that nature is important. But I think at the hallmark, or at the core, I should say, is the respect and the dignity that these investigations deserve. And so we're very big on that.
What about confidentiality? I mean, what if a
That
spirit
too.
says, this went
Right.
on, but I really don't want to talk to them about it?
Thank you. You just reminded me. I knew there was something I was forgetting. Confidentiality is important. And I'll tell you this much. Like, I've had a couple of cases where people wanted us to investigate because they wanted media attention and only that. So I declined it. I didn't tell them why. I just said, declined it. I had another case where uh, the manager of one of our famous theaters here in San Diego, wanted us to investigate. And I said, well, I need written permission from the owner of the premises. And she just kept, dishing me around, and I, kind of giving excuses. And I said, until we get that written permission, we can't do anything. But confidentiality is huge. If a client and we have actually that on our form, for them to check. I give written permission for, blah, 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 San Diego Paranormal Research Society to disclose. But even then, I even if they give permission, I tend to not ever disclose certain things. But if they do check on there, I do not wish anyone else to know about this, then we're strict on that. That confidentiality is between us and the client. But even going a step further and in the spirit realm, for example, let's say, and this has happened a couple times where we're doing an EVP session, for example, and we say, if is it okay if we talk to you? Is it okay if we, ask some questions? And we usually do an opening sort of statement to kind of set the intent. And if we get an answer of no, or let's say, do you want us to leave? And we get an answer of yes, we will do that. We'll leave. So,
Just granting the same
right.
respect that you would to somebody in the flesh, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Do paranormal researchers have a responsibility, in your view, to help spirits heal or move on?
I think so. I think, every case is different, but I think that there is a general understanding that, and we always, on our cases, will say, if there's anything, we can do for you, please let us know. Now, sometimes you don't always get a response. That doesn't mean they didn't want it. Just maybe they didn't have enough energy to come through. But I think so. But in order to, like, maybe help them, like, pass on, or not pass on, but transition to a higher spirit rank or whatever, that's where it gets a little tricky for me, because I don't want to do something that I don't necessarily have permission to do. It is the will of the entity, in my opinion. If it knows it can move on and doesn't want to, well, then we shouldn't interfere with that. But if there's enough, I don't want to say proof, but if there's enough evidence to suggest that maybe they do want help, then at that point, yes, to try to help them go through the motion so they can evolve greater, if you will. So,
I know there are whole practices, and particularly ancient practices, that had to
oh
do
yeah,
with the helping the dead to cross, like psychopumping. Do
oh
you
yeah.
feel that a person needs a certain amount of training to do it effectively?
I This is an interesting question. If a person is operating from not an ego point of view and is operating from a, a, a soul level of kindness and wants to do good, in that case, maybe if they aren't as experienced as maybe other practitioners, I think they deserve a chance. But it's the ones, even if they have amazing experience, if their heart is not in the right place, or they're doing it for out of selfishness or anything like that, then that's when I raise my hand and go like, wait a second. So, but I think, yes, I mean, I think obviously experience does help, of course.
I'll bet you have to dance around agenda a fair amount as well. How do cultural beliefs influence the interpretation of hauntings and spiritual contact?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I've researched this a lot, and going back, there's always been this universal idea that it's just different in the interpretation with different cultures, but there's this universal idea that dates back, thousands of years, that okay, once someone dies, okay, what's left? What do we do with the body, or what happens to the soul? I do think there's like a general agreement that we're understanding that the soul evolves, but it's just the practices and how to handle the body, or exactly what happens to that soul, is a little different with different cultures. But and it brings me to actually paranormal investigating. And when you're out on a case, you have to be aware a little bit of some of the religious or the cultural predispositions, that like Catholic religion, for example. I don't want to get too religious, but the kind of the people are brought up to believe, if they pay heavy attention to that religion, that okay, ghosts are evil and this and that. So you have to kind of work that into, if you're doing, like, for example, a private residence or even a business or historical case, look at what those cultures are and look at what the understanding is, and just kind of work around it. So it's
Makes
definitely
perfect
not something to ignore.
Makes perfect sense. And it's time for us to take another station break. Please stay with us as Nicole and I continue to explore unseen worlds. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Do ghosts stay mad? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Nicole Strickland. Her website, NicoleDStrickland.com. Nicole, what lessons have spirits taught you about healing and forgiveness?
Yeah, that's a lot, I think. If I had to summarize this, it's the understanding that our time here on Earth, being in the living realm, is limited, but there's a whole another journey that awaits us beyond this life and maybe beyond the next, whatever, so on and so on. So it's taught me to really pay attention to, more so, to the things that matter in life, and paying more attention to, you know, looking within, and listening more to my the wisdom that we all have, that innate wisdom. So that's what it's taught me, just to pay attention more to that.
Have you found that since, opening your senses up to do the investigations and everything, that you're actually more privy to energetic things going on around you in your world?
That's absolutely. It's so funny how that works, because I don't know if funny is the right word, but I've always been open to it. I've always been a little more perceptive, I think, than, I don't want to say than the average, but I guess I have to say that, than the average person. But yes, just delving into this work, you do find that your senses heighten, even that sixth sense that we have. But the clairvoyancy has gotten, more fine-tuned, as well as, all the other the clairs specifically, more for me, the clairaudience, the clairvoyance, and the clairsentience, for sure. And I just think that that exposure helps to just fluff that out a little bit. But again, for me, I have a passion to do this work. I'm not in it for greed or for superficiality. I really have a true, honest passion to do this work. And so I think if you're coming from that standpoint, then you're going to find that those senses even grow faster.
We don't get in our own way, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's all, I do get in my own way a lot, but I'm trying. It's taught me to really pay attention more to what matters. So
How much of developing that has to do with letting go of our self-doubt?
I think it's all part of that. I think it's all it's like a tree, and there's just the branches all connect to the same tree. It's all part of that, and but I just think not just the paranormal, but just growing older and being more exposed to life itself helps with that. But again, it goes back to that understanding that, you know what, this is not it. Materialism, it doesn't matter. I mean, we all want things and stuff like that. But when you're on a paranormal investigation, you're dealing with those that have passed on. And so it's just that constant reminder in your head, this isn't forever. So, pay attention to what matters.
My
I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'm sorry.
My grandmother used to always say, "Shrouds don't have pockets." Okay.
There
And
you
I love
go.
that. I love
I
that.
love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
You're welcome to use it. She's crossed, and I'm sure she'd be delighted.
Oh my gosh. Oh, you're so kind. So is she.
Have you ever experienced a case that transformed you on a soul level?
Oh boy, I think all of them have to a certain extent. There's been so many that I've done. Uh, I will, yes, I think all of them have to an extent, but the ones that stand out for me, again, Queen Mary related, but also we had tenure at a haunted rancho here, the Rancho Buena Vista Adobe up in Vista, California. And if you're don't know where that is, but you're familiar with Southern California, it's east of Oceanside and west of San Marcos. It's about 30 minutes north of San Diego. So we did a paranormal tours there for 10 years, and they were fundraising tours. So the money went back into the Adobe. And so we would lead guests on basically how we would run a paranormal investigation of the site. So we did that. We also did some private team investigations there. And the consistency there, and especially with audio, even with instrumental transcommunication, and that's a little bit more subjective. I mean, there's a lot of things you have to take in with that because it can really be audio pareidolia, so to speak. But month after month after month, we would get the same vocalizations from the same individuals that were introducing themselves as actual owners or people that resided on the rancho many years past. And it had gone through several owners over the years. And then the city of Vista purchased it in 1989. But that just blew our mind to be able to have that consistency in the intelligence and to communicate. There were even cases there where we would take an EVP or disembodied voice capture that we obtained. Then we would compare that to research to see if there was any validity. And of course, we were able to find that in historical records about the rancho. So that's an example. The ones where you have a departed family member that has passed and the client wants to reach them, that we've had cases like that, and those are very heartwarming. So
How can people use paranormal encounters as a tool for inner growth?
oh my gosh, I I think at the core, what comes to me, because there's like so much I want to say, but at the core of it is the golden rule. Just as you want to treat the energies with the golden rule, that's how you should apply to people in your life. For example, you don't want to go up to a stranger and just start rambling off questions. I mean, that's just kind of rude, but and same with paranormal research. That's why when you're going to do an EVP session, have that statement of intent, introduce yourself, have that statement kind of setting the positive, respectful tone. So it helps a lot with, and many might say, well, that's weird, but it does help a lot, I think, with intra and interpersonal growth. just having more of a communication that is honest and comes from, your true inner self, as opposed to something that's just blatant ego, or something that doesn't sit right with how your soul wants to be.
Well, in this era of social media and all that's brought, the respect seems to have gone out the window.
I know. I know.
And it's from what you're saying, it's like if you start treating, you're walking into their home.
Right, well,
Maybe,
I know. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's amazing. So, what misconceptions about spirits or hauntings would you most like to dispel?
Well, again, this goes back to the entertainment industry, and I don't wanna criticize it, I don't, because there's pros and cons, but this consensus that and I don't know if it means to do this, but it's like this obsession around ghosts and entities being nothing but evil and terrorizing and something to be afraid of. That I want, to dispel. Also the overclassification, I think, of some energies. For example, let me give an example to try to explain what I'm saying. Let's say someone finds a couple scratch marks on their skin and they automatically assume, oh my gosh, that was something evil that did that. Someone wanted to harm me, when in fact, maybe that's not the intent at all on the spirit. It's what we project. And due to our fears of the unknown, we're ascribing that to the spirit. Maybe it's if you touch a hot stove, you're going to get a red mark. And it is thought that, ghostly energies have some sort of, or made out of some sort of um, electricity, component or whatnot, ionic energy, what have you. So maybe is that like a biological reaction of, maybe if it touched you, your skin got, I don't know. But this over classifying and over assuming that if you have a experience that you deem negative, that it's absolutely negative on the part of the spirit to want to do that. So those are two things that come to mind heavily.
When we're so into fear and polarization,
Yeah.
then don't we interpret the
Right.
experience that might be neutral as something evil?
That's a much better way to put it than I did. But yes, I think so. Yeah.
Where do you feel paranormal research is heading in the next decade?
Oh my goodness. I think it's going to advance in the sense of technology, but then I wonder, okay, how is AI going to influence this? I think there's going to be pros and cons to implementing or over implementing AI. Uh, I, I mean, I want it to advance as it should, but I think that there's going to be, for example, the entertainment industry's influence, um, reliance on technology, all of this. I just find that that may dampen it a little bit. I don't want to be negative, but I do see more and more people getting interested in it. And I would hope that for those people that there's a genuine interest in it and it's not motivated by greed or superficiality. So that's I'd like to think that it's heading in a very positive direction, but there's just some little kinks there that I think need to be worked out.
Do you think that, right now we're all busy trying to prove it exists? Once we back off and say, well, it exists, and then can just experience it, do you think that'll show improvement on the relationship between
That
spirits and people?
you know what, no one that is beautifully said. That is wonderful. Yes, I have backed off from that because I don't think, if it was provable to us in the mortal realm, I think we would have already done it, and I don't think that that's what matters. I think what matters is the journey and the experience, and I believe, and I could be wrong, that the afterlife gives us signs and glimpses, but it's not meant to give us everything. And I don't think us in the mortal realm are meant to understand everything until we get there. But that's my thought. But yes, if we do back off from having to prove and prove and prove, and then there's this competition going on, right? That's beautifully said. I agree with you.
Well,
Yeah.
Nicole, it's about that time in the program when I get to ask you, what's your mission?
My mission is continuing to do what I do. It reminds me of the starfish poem. You can't help everything, but if you can help one and get it back to safety, that's where I'm at. Just following my passion and sharing my passion for this field with everyone, and hopefully be a little educating in the process. So
Well, Nicole, bless you for this very beautiful work that you're doing in the world.
thank you so much for having me on. It's been such a pleasure.
It has been a true joy. That concludes our journey with Nicole Strickland, investigator, teacher, and explorer of the spirit world. Her work reminds us that consciousness extends far beyond the boundaries of physical existence and that interaction with the unseen may be guiding humanity towards a deeper understanding of who we truly are. For more information about Nicole, her books, research, and upcoming appearances, visit her website at NicoleDStrickland.com. To discover more about our own ongoing exploration of human potential and consciousness, visit us at www.missionevolution.org. And as always, may you find your path and may your path lead to evolution. This is Gwilda Wiyaka. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and keep evolving.